Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I want to thank everyone for coming. Inshallah, we have our speaker, Dr. Shama Rashid, who came last time. And alhamdulillah, we received her very well as a community. And all of you wanted a second part and wanted more information regarding what she had to say. So inshallah, we have the honor to have her here with us for the second time for the second part. So I would like to call on Dr. Shama Rashid. Assalamu alaikum. So, how are you doing?
Thank you for having me back.
Oh, thank you for
Are we
coming.
ready to start?
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to go.
Stage all yours. So 45 minutes talk and then question and answer for about 15 minutes.
So we're talking for 45 minutes?
Up to you.
How long did you say?
Up to you. What do you want to do?
And can I have the link for the Facebook Live?
Yes, I'll send it to you right now. Yeah, so somewhere on there, we're thinking finish 9:30. You decide how you want to portion it out.
Okay.
Okay, so you have 1 hour.
Okay. All right.
Jazakallah khair.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. My name is Dr. Shama Rashid, and I am a board-certified child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist. But before we begin, I would like to start by Surah Al-Fatiha. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Maliki Yawm ad-Din. Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين آمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. So I just want to make sure that our technical team, are y'all able to see me at this Zoom magnification? I hope so, because I don't think that the mic is going to allow me to go in front the way that we had originally thought. All right, so hopefully this works. So assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you so much. For those of you who are coming here for the first time, welcome. And for those of you who have come back again, I'm honored that you want to hear more of me and my thoughts and my experience and my words regarding marriage, premarital and postmarital counseling and therapy, and the principles that we need to make a relationship work. I'm going to actually, I think I'm just going to stand right here because it's the mic. Okay, so let me start by telling you about my journey. For those of you, since it's a lot of you, it's your first time, I'll tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a bit of a unicorn because when I went to medical school here at University of Texas, McGovern in Houston, I was the first Muslim that I knew of in the United States that was born and raised here that decided to become a psychiatrist. So most of the physicians in my age category, of which you will not know, but I did graduate medical school in 1999, so I've been a doctor now for 25 years. Most of them had come from overseas and had chosen psychiatry as a field, subject of study for residency. But I believe that in order to really be able to understand the culture of being Muslim and American, the best advantage is to be born and raised here. So I felt like I was on the cusp of two cultures. And I really didn't have any other colleagues that understood the Muslim experience from a psychiatric perspective. Subsequently, throughout my training, I had a chance to practice in different countries such as Malaysia and the United Arab Emirates. So I have an international private practice right now that spans several continents. I've also had a media background history, and I did a television talk show for about 3 years and have had a long, extensive history in media. And the forte of doing relationships really came about when we saw the advent of a lot of people in America struggling with relationships, premarital and postmarital. There's a lot of emphasis and focus on marriage. Unfortunately, there isn't as much emphasis on divorce, which is starting to become more and more rampant. In fact, the statistics for the Muslim community now match the American diaspora, and the divorce rate for Muslims in the United States now is 50%, which matches the national average. In fact, I said this in my last speech, the masjid that I go to in Sugar Land, the imam a couple of years ago gave a khutbah and said he did 150 nikahs, and in the past 2 years, 90 of them are already divorced. What is going on with our Muslim community? Why are we not able to make our relationships work? And what are the ingredients necessary to make marriage work? It is with this thought that I started, exploring the whole world of Muslim marriages in America. And I think all of you, inshallah, will hopefully benefit from the experience that I've had personally and professionally in regards to relationships. So the first part I'd like to tell you is that I believe that in order to have a healthy relationship, and this is just a little bit of a recap for those of you who came last time, it'll be a review. For those of you, it's your first time, hopefully you'll enjoy what I'm about to say. But I believe that in order to have a healthy relationship with anybody, you first have to have a healthy relationship with yourself, right? So if you're not in a good place mentally, physically, spiritually, and intellectually, it's going to be very difficult for you to have a healthy relationship with someone else, right? And what do I mean by that? When I talk about physical health, that's pretty self-explanatory, right? Are you sleeping properly? Are you exercising? You're eating the right things? Are you drinking enough water? Are you going to the doctor regularly? Just regular physical health, right? Which a lot of us struggle with, especially here in Texas with all the great food. Second is emotionally, and there's two types of emotional health. There's external emotional health, and there's internal emotional health. So what I teach my patients when they come to me for therapy is you can cut out all of the toxic people in your life externally. But what happens when your mind is toxic? What happens when the thoughts in your brain are your own worst enemy? And what I mean by that is, I'll give you a simple example. Somebody comes and tells you, you're wearing a very nice shirt today. I really like what you're wearing. And your mind immediately goes to, I saw this person yesterday. They didn't say anything about my shirt yesterday. I knew my shirt yesterday was ugly. So them complimenting me today, it proves that yesterday's shirt was really ugly. It's those negative thoughts that people have constantly where we berate ourselves. And so how do you cut out internal toxicity? So you've got to be balanced externally and internally in terms of your emotional health, right? So learning to make your brain your own best friend instead of your worst enemy, right? In fact, the word shaitan, what's the root of the word shaitan? It's from shayat, which means division, to divide, right? So divide your brain into something positive and negative. The third way to stay healthy is to be spiritually healthy. The most successful people in life, and you'll notice this throughout life, are the people that have a very strong sense of purpose. You know who you are, you know why you're here on this earth, and you know where you're going. How many people can actually answer that? What is your purpose in this world? Why are you here? In fact, recently I went to ISNA last weekend, and I heard a brother speak, and I just was so profound. And he said, and it stuck by me, and I said, I wanted to share it with all of you today. He said, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has 99 attributes, right? And each of those attributes is a beautiful attribute that we should all try to aspire to, right? The most just, the guide to the right path, right? The most merciful. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in our fitrah has given us many, many good qualities spiritually. But there's one that's going to really stand out for you. And that's the one that you need to glorify. So what I would ask you to do is to think of all the attributes that you can think of that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has. Pick one that you really feel you want to make stand out in your personality. Make that your North Star. Make that your purpose. So for me, my parents inadvertently didn't realize it, but my first name is Shama, which means candles or light, and my last name is Rashid, and Rashid, is the guide to the right path. It's one of the 99 names of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And my mother said, without me realizing it, I named you the light that would guide people to the right path. You became a da'i and a psychiatrist. Do you see what I'm trying to say, guys? Figure out what quality of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala you want to glorify as your purpose in this life, and then go do it. Go find a way to serve Allah with which attribute appeals to you the most. There may be many, there may be more than one. So your spiritual health has to do with having that really strong sense of purpose. And then every single thing you do has to serve that purpose. I've had several people come up to me today and say, you're a medical doctor and you've driven all the way out here. What is your honorarium? What do you charge? Why would you come out here and drive out 4 hours? Because I'm serving, Ya Allah, His attribute, the guide to the right path. This is what I was born to do. Do you see what I'm trying to say, guys? Something has to be higher than just the material things in this life, right? So as long as you, whatever field you choose, like me being a psychiatrist or me being a therapist or a mother or a daughter or a friend, as long as I'm doing it with that North Star, I want to guide people to the right path. Now I have a higher purpose, and my whole life is just prayer and ibadah, right? So that's your spiritual health. And then lastly, your intellectual health, right? What is intellectual health? When your physical health, emotional health, and spiritual health are grounded, now guess what? You're limitless. Your brain can go anywhere. You can serve anything educationally, professionally, personally, your hobbies. You can really just shine intellectually. How can you have strong intellectual health if your physical, emotional, and spiritual health aren't grounded? So once you've really figured these 4 areas out, now the soil has been tilled. The fertilizer's been put in your soil. Now you're ready to embed into a healthy relationship with your partner, okay? So guys, the first relationship we need to talk about is not the relationship you're gonna have with your future partner in marriage, it's the one you have with yourself, okay? So that being said, and that's a journey, right? For some people it may take a few months, for some people it may take years, some people it may take a lifetime. And that's why there is no specific age, even though Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala encourages us to get married early, and I think there's a lot of protection. But some people come to me in their 40s and they're like, I still haven't figured myself out. That's why I'm not married. I just don't feel like I'm there to give my partner what they need. So start that journey starting today, inshallah. Find your North Star and find a way to have that healthy relationship with yourself. Now, once you've done that, now you're ready to actually go out and search for that partner, right? And what are the guiding principles that we need? Now, we all know that Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, you know, these are the qualities you look for. You look for deen, you look for family, you look for beauty, you look for all these other things. But there is a skill set that is also necessary for you to know how to have a healthy relationship. There are skills, and that's what you come into a faith-based therapist like myself to learn. Islam-based psychological skills that will help you to make sure that that relationship is healthy. Number 1, what is the number 1 thing men look for in a relationship? And for all of you Instagram psychologists, I'm sure you'll be well aware of this. It's respect. Men want respect above everything. Above everything. Unfortunately, we live in a society, and I can say it as a woman. I think if any of the men said it in the audience, they would get a lot of blowback. I think feminism has really led to the destruction of the family unit, the Western idea of feminism. Okay, I think that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us gender roles, and those roles, when they're adhered to as closely as possible, leads to a healthy family, which is the foundation of our society. This whole idea that it's your opinion versus my opinion, I like purple, you don't like purple, well, I'm gonna wear purple anyways, khalas. If your husband likes you to wear purple or doesn't like purple, wear it or don't wear it. It's not a big deal. But having this need to have your own, and I'm not talking about the extremes of men that are just going to abuse that, but I think that women need to understand that there is a role that we have to play in a family unit and a home. And I'm a big, big believer in gender roles. And I can say that because I am seen as the prototype of independent, successful, educated Western woman, right? Because I'm a medical doctor, and I've been practicing for many years. I've raised kids successfully. I have a TV show. So there you go. Here I am saying, women, we need to be feminine. We need to give our husbands the respect that they earn by being the provider and the protector. I'm not saying someone who doesn't respect their role as a husband. If somebody's respecting their role as a husband, then we need to be that soft, feminine, safe space for our husbands to be able to come home and really provide that nurturing and that loving environment and a place of peace. And I think that right now, because there's been such a blurring of gender roles, it's really, unfortunately, screwed up society. In the same way, I feel that their feminism has really destroyed us. I feel that the emasculation of men has also led to the destruction of the family unit. Men more and more are forgetting and not realizing what their roles are, have really bought into this whole feminist ideology and are like, you can work and pay for half the bills, and I still want you to be a size 2, and I still want you to look hot, and I still want you to take care of the kids and cook and clean, but I also need you to work and help me with those bills, honey. It doesn't work that way. There are roles given by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but then men will say, well, my wife wants the Mercedes, my wife wants the big car, my salary only allows for this. The only way I can give her these needs is if she works as well. So now we have to also revamp what is more important for us. Is it more important for us to be able to fulfill our roles as mothers and wives and as the nurturers, and if we have extra time we can work and have our careers? Or is it more important for us to keep up with the Joneses and have the nicer house and the nicer car, so now we're killing ourselves to try to work, and husbands and wives are now arguing who's more tired, who's going to cook, who's going to clean, who's going to watch the kids? And this is where I see a lot of arguments coming in marriages and couples where I do couples therapy. So once again, I think we as women and men have to go back to the Quran and Sunnah when it comes to the roles of men and the roles of women. And it doesn't mean that you're taking away from someone's intelligence or their right to have an opinion. I'm just saying you need to understand those roles first, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not going to ask me how highly did I get educated, how many board certifications and how many degrees did I get. He's going to ask me, how did I raise my children? Did I provide peace and love in the home? Did I give my husband a home that he wanted to come home to or not, right? In the same way, husbands, you're not going to be asked, right? Oh, you know what? Did you make sure that you had the bigger home and you made sure that you had your wife work extra, and then you also wanted her to be that size too and stay in shape, but you didn't really help her with the kids so that she could go take care of other things. You wanted her to do everything. He's not going to ask you those questions, right? So I think there's a lack of education in our girls and our boys over what our roles are. Next, I think that, so men want respect. What do women want? I've talked a lot about men. What do women want? What's the number one thing that women want in a relationship? Does anyone know? It's safety and security. We need to feel emotionally and financially and spiritually and physically safe and secure that our men can take care of us. That's what we need. If we feel safe, now we're allowed to be in our feminine. So many women nowadays don't even know how to be in their feminine because their men aren't stepping up and making them feel safe in those areas, right? How is a woman supposed to be feminine if she's stepping up and doing his role? She can't. She doesn't feel safe. Or how can she allow herself to be vulnerable if her husband gives her low blows when they're in an argument, and then she feels like she can't feel emotionally safe anymore? So women want to feel safe and secure, men want to be respected. So remember that as a key factor in the person that you're looking for. Is that person going to be able to do that? Next is another big issue that I feel comes up in marriages all the time, and that's mental health. I feel like there's a huge epidemic of mental health issues in husbands and wives nowadays, where things like depression, anger issues, coping with stress, insomnia, intimacy issues, all these things that, mental health effects really, really affect a marriage. I've had many marriages where husbands have had to end the marriage because of instability, or wives have had to end the marriage because of the mental instability of the other person. This goes back to the emotional health that I was talking about. If you know you have anger issues, if you know you have mood swings or premenstrual syndrome, or 1 week out of the month you're just, before your menstrual cycle you're just going crazy, you know that, take care of it. There is good treatment for mental health nowadays. There's medications, there's therapy, there's lots of help available. Every single one of us here lives, alhamdulillah, in the United States. We live a privileged life. It is up to you to get the help that you need. There's no longer that historical stigma of getting help for your mental health. In fact, most mental health care is not done by psychiatrists like myself. Most mental health care in the United States is done by family practice doctors. And that's because you go to your doctor for your regular checkup, and then you say, oh, I'm under stress, I can't sleep, and there's less of a stigma, right? I'm getting my Zoloft or my Prozac not from my psychiatrist, but from my GP who's doing my well woman exam. So I think that mental instability is a huge factor, and I think it's very important when you're vetting a girl or a guy to find out if they have a mental health history. 50% of human beings in the United States have generalized anxiety disorder. 50% of the population suffers from a diagnosable psychiatric condition called anxiety that needs treatment. How does that affect your life? I know all of you have had experience of being around someone who's anxious all the time. It's terrible. Imagine you're trying to live your normal life and you're constantly with someone who's stressing out, is anxious. Your life is hell. Just even something as simple as anxiety can ruin your life, let alone depression or PMS or bipolar disorder or anger issues or all the other things that come into play. So I think finding out someone's mental health history, not to say stigmatize it, because I treat it all the time, but making sure, are you addressing it and taking care of it, right? It's two imperfect people coming together. Third, I think, and I talked about this last time, the number one reason that I see people having issues in their marriages is intimacy issues. You know, we talked about the epidemic of pornography that is rampant in our Muslim society, especially amongst Muslim men, and the kind of warped idea of what intimacy looks like for men when they've grown up secretly watching pornography, because we live in a society where men and women historically have not been allowed to mix or date or have premarital relations. So we grew up with a bunch of boys who watch porn, and I'm sure all of you are aware of this, and then when they get married, it really affects their marital life. And I've had many, many cases of this, unfortunately, in my practice, where I've had patients come in asking for medications and treatment, things like that, related to subjects involving intimacy. In fact, I would venture to say, and I said this last time, that intimacy is 70% of a marriage. And it's not just the act of intercourse itself, it's everything that surrounds intimacy, right? It's all of those wonderful, loving acts of kindness and service that lead to a good, healthy, intimate life. But if your relationship with your partner is off emotionally, is off spiritually, is off intellectually, then you're not going to have a good intimacy life. And that's why I say it's a reflection of all the other areas. So how do I add those 4 things into your relationship with another partner? So with your partner, you need to have physical chemistry, right? You need to be attracted to them. They need to take care of themselves, be clean, be healthy, try to work out, try to be a partner where you have physical attraction. That's number 1. It's very important, especially even more so for men than women, but definitely for women as well. Number 2, emotionally, you have to be able to feel that you can share with your partner emotional things and feel emotionally safe and connected, and they're supportive in your hopes and dreams and your feelings, and they really respect each other. Third, you have to be able to feel that you're spiritually aligned. If you have one partner who's on a really strong spiritual path and the other one's like, yeah, you're not going to have that connection with your partner if you guys are different spiritually, right? Your aqidah has to be in the same place, and you have to have that same desire or level of wanting to grow spiritually. And number 4, intellectually. I see a lot of husbands and wives that don't respect each other's intellectual capacity. Oh, what do they know? I don't need to listen to their opinion. I don't need to listen to her opinion or his opinion. You have to be able to have a mutual respect intellectually for your partner and feel like their opinions matter and count, and that they're used in the decisions that you make for your lives as a married couple. So those 4 areas have got to be connected. So when couples come in and they talk to me and they say, hey, I'm having marriage issues, I always ask them which one of these 4 is missing, and usually 1, 2, 3, or all 4 are off. And that really helps to guide me in which direction I need to work on with that couple, okay? Next, the other issue that I see is people don't know how to have result-oriented speech. And let me break that down for you. It's simple communication. You want something out of your wife, do you know how to get it? Do you think about what you're going to say before you open your mouth and then you get a totally different reaction than what you wanted? If you want a raise from your boss, you'll go and ask all the people at work, hey, you got a raise, how did you get it? Oh, the boss has to be in this kind of mood. Let me approach him at lunchtime. You think about it, right? You think about the result you want, which is a raise, before you go to your boss. You don't just come say, hey, give me a raise. You think about how you're going to talk to them and what their personality is like, what their mood is like, before you think about getting that result. Why don't we do the same in our personal lives and our relationships? We just go and vomit whatever we feel, and then we're surprised that our partner doesn't give us the result that we want. So learning simple communication skills is so important, and I'm going to give you 2 little pearls of wisdom. Of course, if you want to know more, you'd have to become my patient. So one of the skills that I teach is called a compliment sandwich. So you can use this for your children, for your colleagues, for your friends, for your love interest, whoever. If you want to give your partner a piece of information or tell them something that you feel is important that may be a negative thing, you first start off by complimenting them. And I'll give you something very simple as a boss firing an employee. And you can use this in your marital life as well. You say, hey, Joe, we thought, we've loved having you in the company. You've really been working hard, and, we've really enjoyed your tenure here. Unfortunately, we're going to have to let you go because we're doing some layoffs. But you know what? When you come back, we will leave a space open if it comes back, and we'll write you a letter of recommendation, and hopefully we'll be able to have you come back one day. That's a compliment sandwich. You complimented them, you gave them the punchline, and then you complimented them again. Try that next time with someone that you care about when you want a result. Instead of just telling them you suck or you did this terribly, you start off by saying something good, then you give them the punchline, then you say something good again. I promise you'll get a better result than just hitting them straight up, okay? So that's a simple technique I use for communication. All right, so there's many communication skills that you guys can learn. And I know, like, I'm doing couples therapy, so I do a lot of premarital counseling for couples. And 2 days ago, I was doing therapy, and I was teaching the boy and the guy and the girl this theory. And the guy just looked at me and he said, Dr. Rashid, that's just so many words. That's just way too many words for me to use, a compliment and then a punchline. I said, yes, but it'll save you hours later on of the fight that you're about to have, right? Because you didn't communicate it right the first time. So actually, it may seem like more effort to you right now, but in the long run, it'll save you a lot of time, all right? So result-oriented speech is a very effective tool that if each of you use it in your lives, you'll notice that you'll be able to get anything out of anyone. When I looked at the boy, and he's been having a hard time with his fiancée, I said, you know, I can get your fiancée to do anything. How, Dr. Rashid? It's so difficult. I said, because I know how to talk to her. And you've seen this in your own lives. If you struggle with someone in your relationship, but you see somebody else has a really good effect on them, what are they doing different than you are? They're just communicating with them differently. Okay, so I think it's very important for each of us nowadays. There's many avenues for y'all to learn over the internet or courses on how to speak and how to communicate, all right? Things that don't work are stonewalling, the silent treatment, right? Shutting someone out and saying no, screaming, yelling, using violence. All of these things are not effective ways to get the result that you want, right? All you're doing is releasing your own anger or your own frustration, but that may be deep-rooted. So the next thing that I see is that, unfortunately, a lot of us grew up in dysfunctional families. We learned really bad examples from our parents and our elders on how to handle conflict, right? So I think it's extremely important, and I'm going to say it right out there, when you're getting married to someone, go spend some time with their family. Go spend time with their family. Not like you're coming to someone's house for 30 minutes, having chai or tea and going back. Spend a week or 2 weeks with them. Travel with them. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, travel with people. You learn about them. Go with your family and spend time. You will learn the dynamics of that family. You will learn how the father treats the mother or the mother treats the father. You will learn if there's disrespect or sarcasm that's being used at the dinner table in the morning. People can't fake it, guys. If you're spending 24/7 with them and you go stay with someone for a couple of weeks, they can't fake it that long. Eventually, if you're looking for it, the words are going to come out. You're going to see. And also look at how they're going to treat you. I think there is a lot to say about families of origin. I believe in psychodynamic psychotherapy, which is that we are a result of the way that we're raised. So all the good things and bad things that we're raised with, you grow up with it, and then you bring it into your marriage. So if your partner grew up in a really dysfunctional home, you're like, oh, no, but he's so great or she's so great. No. There's a lot of bad habits that they've picked up, unfortunately, from just seeing bad habits in their home. So you guys have to both be very aware of it and understand that about each other. One of the reasons that I'm a big propagator of premarital therapy and postmarital therapy is because there are things that I can say as a therapist that if you said it to each other, you would be offended. So for example, I can talk about in-laws. And I say, what is your role? What do you want to do with your mom? What's your expectation? If a girl says that to a guy, he's going to be like, why are you talking about my mama? What are you trying to say? Right? But if I say it, it's coming from a neutral party. This is why I believe, and I said this in my speech last time, the Catholic Church requires their priests will not get you married unless you have 6 months of premarital counseling. And I feel like Muslim masajids should adopt some similar guidelines to give young couples or even older couples the skills and tools that they need. And we need mental health professionals that are Islam-based to guide these young couples and make sure to ask these really sticky questions. For example, finances are always brought up. They say 80% of marriages are because of finances. I don't believe that. I think it's intimacy that really is the big issue that it always comes out to. But finances are really important, right? Saving, spending. I've seen people with no money who spend like crazy, and I have people with tons of money who spend no money. Wealth is not an indicator, girls, of how much your man is going to spend on you. It has nothing to do with it. It's just his heart and what he feels, and vice versa. Just because a girl is raised in a wealthy family or a poor family doesn't mean that her spending habits are conservative or liberal. It just depends on who that person is and how they take what they grew up with and absorb it into their lives. In fact, you may see two kids born in the same family. One's very miserly and one just spends money like crazy, but they were raised by the same parents, right? So I think it's extremely important in premarital counseling to talk about things like saving, spending, what would the budget be. Those things have to be sorted out before you get married, not after, okay? Next thing is relationship with each other's families. We all come from cultures where we are a lot of times very enmeshed with our families of origin. What are each other? Most guys don't even think about this. Wait, how much time do I need you to spend with my mom or my dad, or how often do I want them to? It only happens after the girl messes up, and then the in-laws are upset, and then the guy's like, oh, why didn't you do this? Well, you never told me. You didn't tell me what your expectations are. Vice versa, the girl will not tell the guy what her expectations are because she herself has never thought about it. But it is super, super important in Muslim families to discuss roles of each other's parents and siblings and extended family and what those expectations are, and make sure that both of you guys agree on what that is before you get married. Because I had a couple, the girl ended up having a fight and ended up putting like a scissor in her arms because they're fighting on Eid over whose house they were going to go to. Oh, you went to their house last week, last time, this time, and it's silly stuff that can really get out of control. So understanding that families of origin play a huge role and making it very clear, and if you haven't thought about it, think about it now. Start thinking about what kind of expectations you have of your partner, and then also not just the expectations you have of your partner, but what do your families of origin have You may not care if your partner calls your parents once a week or in-laws, but those parents may care. Sit down and have those talks with your own parents. What do you guys expect out of my partner? And is that really realistic? And letting them know that, hey, you know what, that's not going to be important to me, so if they don't call you, please don't blame her. It's because I really don't think it's that important myself, or whatever it is. You know, remember, parents will always forgive their own kids. They'll just blame everything on the daughter-in-law or the son-in-law. If there's any changes, it's their fault. But that's not always the case, right? It's just that that person may be that way and they just didn't realize it until they got married. So what I'm doing right now is I'm talking about different issues that I think, and the reason I'm bringing it out is because in the question answer part, I want you to use this as fodder for the types of questions that may come up in regards to the issues that I'm talking about. And I'm just touching on each one because there's so much to talk about. I think that, like I said, relationships are complicated. And I think one of the other things that complicates things in America is we do a lot of cross-cultural marriages, right? Back at home, it was your village. If you're, Egyptian, you're only marrying people from Cairo, and that's all you ever saw. Or if you're Punjabi, or if you're Burmese, whatever it is. But now in America, we have what's called TCKs, third culture kids. It's when your mom's from one place, your dad's from another place, you were born and raised in another place. You have this identity diffusion. So you kind of have your own subculture that you've created, right? And now you're marrying someone else who came from their own family of origin, and they have their own cultural differences. And I feel like that's something that also needs to be discussed, because it plays into everything, from the food you eat, from the way you dress, from the cultures and the traditions that you celebrate and the way that you celebrate them. All are impacted by the fact that we are coming from a multicultural diaspora. And I feel like a lot of marriages are failing because there's a lack of understanding of culture, each other's cultures, and then there's always this argument of how much is this is Islam, your culture sucks, this is poo-poo, this is bid'ah, this is this, and it just gets into all sorts of stuff, right? So I think those are things that also need to be discussed in terms of what you guys are going to look like as a couple and a unit in and of yourself. Are you going to be celebrating the cultures that you grew up with, or do you have your own new subculture, and do they match? And is that going to work with your families of origin? So this is a lot of information I'm giving you. I hope if anybody really wants to study, if they're thinking of getting married or are married, writes down these points, because these are points of discussion that you really need to be having with your families and with your future potential partners, okay? I'm going to take a little break right now because I've been talking and I don't want people to get lost in all the things I'm going to talk about, and see if anyone has any comments or questions on the things that I've spoken about so far. So I'm going to open the floor to questions. Anybody? I must be covering very thoroughly. No one seems to have questions. That means I'm doing a really good job. Yes? So the question is, if you're in love with someone or you have a loved one, you're in a relationship, and that person is having mental health issues, and they're in denial, they're like, no, I'm fine, it's you, or I don't need any. And we encounter that a lot, right? In fact, most couples that come to me are people that are like, look, my partner has mental health issues, they don't want to do anything about it. And that is a very, very, very tough situation to be in, where someone's in denial of their own issues. And I think it points to a deeper issue. And I think what you would need to do at that point is say, okay, maybe there's something wrong with us as a couple. Maybe there's something we need to work on. Let's go to a counselor and work on it together. And you can share what issues you have with me, and then we can share that together, because at the end of the day, if you don't address the mental health issues, you're going to get divorced. That's just the bottom line. Divorce is too easy nowadays, guys. It's just too easy of an out in America, right? In fact, 75 to 80% of divorces are filed by women in the United States, right? Not men, in the Muslim community. So don't think anymore that we live in a society where, oh, she got married, no, they'll leave you. And the other 25% are men, and they'll file as well. So I think that if we don't address these issues and don't understand how serious, because remember, marriage, I always tell people this, like, guys will say, I work so hard, I pay the mortgage, I pay the car note, I do everything, and she doesn't appreciate it. But she's looking at the little things. She's looking at the little stuff. It's the little stuff that makes those daily marriages work in a healthy way. And that's now we get foray into the love languages, right? So there's 5 love languages, right? There's acts of service, which is doing things like making someone a cup of tea or filling their car with gas when they wake up in the morning. Those are acts of service. There's words of affirmation, telling your partner they're beautiful, they're handsome, I love you, all those nice words that make you feel good, right? There's physical touch, being physically affectionate, hugs, kisses, all those, the touch on the head, all those physical touch things that make you feel wanted and special and desired. It's very, very important for couples, for a human being, girl or guy, to feel desired by their partner, right? 4th is going to be, so we've got words of affirmation, physical touch, acts of service, gift giving. So, and the gift giving doesn't have to be like expensive gifts. It could be just, something very sentimental, but you give it as a gift. You make something for them. You write them a poem, whatever it is, gift giving. And then there's one more, there's words of affirmation, physical touch, acts of service, gift giving, and quality time. So being off your phone, being off the phone and giving someone eye-to-eye contact, giving them that special time that's just for them so that y'all can do things together, and quality time. So, these love languages are extremely important, and I think another thing you need to discuss with your partner is, what are their love languages? Which ones out of those 5? Some people say, all 5. Like for me, I'm all 5. I have all 5 love languages, So, but for some people, gift giving may not be that important. And they may say, my wife thinks gift giving is really important, but I think gifts are stupid. So because I think it's stupid, I don't need to give her gifts. I'll give her love the way I want to give her love. Or I'll give him love the way I feel like giving him love. But that's not how relationships work. You have to find out what the other person's love language is and do that. It's not about what like a lot of couples will try to self-soothe and say, you know what, well, he never shows me any love, but he just buys me stuff. I guess that's his love language, and I have to be satisfied with it. But inside, you feel very unfulfilled. And I always tell people this. I gave this example last time. Let's say you're holding this phone. I'm holding this phone, right? How heavy does it feel after 10 seconds? How heavy does it feel after 1 minute? How heavy does it feel after 1 hour? How heavy does it feel after a day, a week? That's super heavy, right? So it goes like this. It's a very light, small thing, but if you don't take care of it, it's going to get heavier and heavier and heavier, and then eventually your hand's going to, give up, right? That's what happens in marriages. Most marriages that come to me, it's that holding that phone. It's holding all those little issues that you never address, and after weeks, months, years, the marriage ends. 50% of you in this room are going to get divorced or are already divorced. 50% of you. Half of the people in this room are. That's the national statistic. That's not a good statistic, guys. And hopefully, I'm hoping that by coming to courses like this and learning, you guys will be maybe part of that 50% that just make it, and all the people outside that aren't watching my course now are going to be the other 50%, but that's the truth, right? So divorce is such a reality. And how divorce doesn't happen overnight. It happens over the little things happening over a long period of time, right? So in medicine, when I was in medical school, we learned about prevention. So there's primary prevention, secondary prevention, and tertiary prevention. And I'll give it to you in terms of AIDS. So primary prevention is don't be abstinent, don't have sex. You won't risk AIDS, right? Secondary prevention is use prevention, right? Use protective things so you don't get AIDS. And then third is you have AIDS and you're treating it. Islam has always, the Quran, everything that, everything, all the dogmatic principles of Islam really, really support primary prevention. Like there's a reason Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, do not have any relationship with a woman or a man before marriage. That's abstinence. That's because every fire has a spark, right? It's the same way in a marriage, guys. You don't wait until everything's festered and rotted and then come to me and say, save my marriage. You got to get in there early. You got to get in there right from the beginning and start building that healthy relationship as soon as little things happen. And that's why not only do I encourage premarital counseling, but I encourage, especially for the newlyweds, post-marital counseling. Because in the beginning, you're just starting to get adjusted and getting to know each other, and there's so many little nuances, and I think it's so important to address those. People should not be coming to marriage counseling because their marriage is in trouble. People should be coming to premarital and post-marital counseling so that their relationships stay healthy. Thank you so much. So, marriage, once again, let me say that again. You don't come to marriage therapy because your marriage is about to die. You come to marriage therapy from the beginning so that you can continue to have a healthy marriage. And I said this in my last speech, and I'll say it again. Stop spending money on flowers and venues and gold and clothes and all the things that we spend on marriage. Start spending it on things that will actually keep your marriage going, which is marriage therapy. So people will easily spend $5,000, $10,000 on jewelry. Spend $5,000, $10,000 to save your marriage for the rest of your life. Isn't that a much better investment for you and your family? Why is it in our culture we're quick to buy the jewelry, but, oh, marriage counseling therapy, that's too expensive. Like, I don't want to spend that money. But dude, you're going to have the big, huge wedding, and how many of us have been to weddings, big, huge, fat, amazing wedding, and you find out a year later that they got divorced? Or a few months later, or even a month later, or 2 years later. What happened? So many of these marriages, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the best of planners, that's for sure, but so many of these marriages could have been saved if they had just gotten the help from the beginning. So for those of you who are thinking of getting married or have children that are thinking of getting married, please, or loved ones, please start with premarital and postmarital counseling. If you're already married, get into postmarital counseling because it keeps your marriage healthy. Now, there are some marriages that are just amazing. You guys are just connected. Great. Mabruk. It's the minority of marriages, right? Most marriages are struggling. And I know this because I do it for a living, and I know that when you peel off that thin layer, there's a lot of problems in that marriage, and everyone's just kind of sucking it up and getting through it. And that's just not how you want to live your life. So in the same way that we give the value for diabetes or high blood pressure or cancer, this is a cancer in your life. If you're struggling in a relationship, that's a cancer in your life. And with the same seriousness that you drop everything and go to MD Anderson Cancer Center in Houston to get treatment, right? If you have cancer, you got to be doing the same for your relationships. And if you do that, then you will enjoy the khushu', the sweetness of your relationship, which Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has said, there's such a rahmah that's been placed between a husband and a wife, where you're the coolness to each other's eyes. You're each other's space of safety and comfort and love and companionship. And, you know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made us in pairs. How are you going to find your pair if you don't have the skill sets to actually nurture that relationship? I'm going to stop here and see if anyone else has any questions or comments. Yes. So the beautiful lady here is saying that she helps a lot of families and couples that have marriage issues, and she says a lot of times she finds that the problem is the mother-in-law. And if the mother-in-law says, nope, she's got to go, the husband feels like he has to listen, and then it breaks the marriage. Yasmin Mojahed did a very a very good talk once called Love, What is Love? Y'all should all watch it on YouTube. I highly recommend it. And in it, she talks about having our lives centered, that all of us have a qalb, our heart, right? And in the center of the heart, there's a place called the lub. And it's the very core center of your heart, and it is only reserved for the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What happens when a mother, instead of putting Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the center of her heart, puts her son? Which is unfortunately what we see a lot of women do, because they themselves have difficult marriages, they didn't get along with their husbands, they had arranged marriages, so they put all their love into their son. And he becomes the one that they're doing like tawaf around, right? That's why there's this issue of mother-in-law versus wife. Why don't we have the other way around? We don't have moms, we don't have girls complaining, oh, my dad is in competition with my husband. It's always the mother-in-law. It's because women, that can become your test. You can put anything in that center. You can put the love of power, right? The love of money, vanity, validation, whatever you want in the center. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has promised that if you put something in the center of your life besides Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, it will lead to your destruction, right? So, and the example she gives is, I love this example, and I always say, it's like if you go to the gas station and you put orange juice, from the gas station instead of gasoline into the car, what happens when you turn it on? It'll die, right? So the center of our hearts for Muslims was meant to not have anything else but the love of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So for me, that question, the issue about the mother-in-law commanding the husband to kick that is a deeper issue that has to do with the faith issue. And I think for sons, they need to understand that if their mother is giving them that type of importance and that type of centrality, that actually is totally against the teachings of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And I think that the most successful men are the ones that know how to balance their responsibilities towards their wife and their mothers. In Islam, it says you need to respect your parents as a man, but not blindly obey them, especially when it comes to the sanctity of your marriage. You have to respect them and be kind to them. But being obedient as an adult man when you're married in regards to your wife, if the parents are creating fitna, no. There's nothing in Islam that supports that. Yes, go ahead. Correct, but they're guiltified. So there's an abuse of the obedience to parents and the mother, the hadith, everything's about your mother. I think a lot of women abuse it. And they really guiltify their sons to say, you have to obey me, you have to obey me. If I'm not happy with you, there's no Jannah for you. And a lot of men feel very psychologically manipulated by that. I see it all the time. So many moms take advantage of that. I'm sorry, I'm saying it as a woman, and I can say it because I am a woman. There's a lot of good moms, but there's some moms that they will use whatever they need to. But he needs to understand his deen. Number one, a man, in order to exercise his authority, first needs to understand his Islam. And even then, if he sets that boundary, he still has to do it with beauty. He still has to do it with rahmah. It's still his mother. It doesn't give anyone the right. You can't be disrespectful to your parents, but you can set that boundary in a loving way. And that goes back to what I was saying, knowing how to communicate. See, like I'll give you an example. If you want someone to take their sweater off, you can say, take your sweater off, or you can just make the room warm enough and they'll take their sweater off. Both ways will result, but one is, yeah. Because there's a lot of mothers that are so used to speaking to their sons in a certain way, they haven't yet graduated to where they see their sons as, and there's a threat, right, that I'm no longer the center, because if a woman has never been made to feel special by her husband, and her son is who made her feel special, and now the son's attention is on the wife, she feels that she's got a loss of a man in her life. So that has to go back to her marriage, and like I said, not having that centrality with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So I understand what you're saying, and I agree with you. You should set boundaries, but a lot of men don't, and that's what she's saying she sees an issue with, is that when men are not able to set those boundaries and understand they have an Islamic right to, and they should. Somebody else had a question? Yes. How do you know if a guy's being abusive? How do you know if a guy's going to be abusive? Well, I wish I was like a psychic, but I'm just a psychiatrist. Listen, honestly, the best that you can do, like I said, is spend time with his family, see the family dynamics, spend time getting to know him, understand that if he's grounded in his deen and his character, the most that you can do is, prophetic tradition is to ask the community. Remember, in Islam, the one time that ghiba technically is allowed, right, or talking negative about someone is if you know something about that person. Don't just go and marry someone blindly. Oh, I love him, he died. No, you need to do your due diligence. Just like before you choose a university or a job, you'll do some due diligence, right? This is the most important decision of your life. So you do as much as you can. And you ask them, how do they do in times of stress? And premarital counseling will definitely also help bring it out, because they'll be able to ask those questions. So I would say spend time. Don't do a shotgun wedding. Spend time getting to know his family of origin. Spend time in their home. Spend time getting to know his friends. What is Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said? You see the 5 closest people to you. It tells you a lot about them. And then the rest you leave it up to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But the number one thing you should look for, and I said this last time, is deen and character. You have to know someone's character, right? And you try to do that the best you can through these methods, and the rest you leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if he does end up being abusive or have a history of mental health issues, at that point you have a right to decide if you want to stay in that marriage. We're in 2024 now. Yes. No. I'm saying that if you want to spend time with the family, you go and say, I'd like to come and spend a week with you. If somebody's marrying my kid, and if they want to come and spend a week with me, please come. I need to get to know you. You should be able to get to know each other's family. If, say, our family will come and visit you. Me and my sister will come and stay with you for a week. Or even if you can't spend the night there, you can spend the majority of the day there, and you can spend a lot of time with them. You can travel, even if it's not traveling necessarily really far, but even going on a day trip somewhere, you'll find out things happen. People get frustrated when they're traveling, but when you spend time with the family, not just an hour at a time, I'm talking from morning till evening, you have to find time to do that. This is the biggest, most important decision of your life. Yeah, there's so many different experiences. I'm not asking about vacations. I'm saying go to their house. Go spend time with them in their home of origin. See how they clean. See how they cook. See how they get along with each other. See how they sit at the dinner table. See how they clean up. See how they act at the time of salah. See what their time is for going to sleep. Wake up. You learn a lot about a family when you spend the day with them. Like extended periods of time, because people can't hold it together that long. Trust me. Yeah, I know. That's why you're here, to learn. It's very effective, though. I recommend it all the time, and people find out a lot about each other's families when they do that. Because that family will tell you a lot about the person. Any other questions or comments? Okay, moving on. So I think I've given you guys a lot of tools right now that are at your disposal. How do you get help? How do you find the right people to guide you and give you advice? I think that's been a big challenge, right? Because I wish I could replicate me and just have a bunch of me around everywhere, because, you need someone that really understands their deen, not on a scholarly level, but understands Islam, has a good, healthy understanding of deen, but also understands relationships and how to conduct them. So we have an app here called the Texas Muslim Mental Health App. It has over 100 providers. that are psychiatrists and therapists that are Muslim, and many of them are born and raised here. We have the Muslim Association of Psychological Services, MAPS, M-A-P-S. A lot of them offer telemedicine appointments or telehealth appointments, as well as accept insurance. So there are all sorts of different types of providers at different levels. Someone like myself is a bit harder to find because there's not very many psychiatrists, medical doctors that do therapy. I'm one of the few that does. And of course, there is a price range that is involved as well, so that's something that you guys have to think of. And I really challenge each and every one of you to start putting therapy and premarital and postmarital counseling as part of your wedding budget. I feel like it needs to be a mandatory part of the budget of your getting married to have at least 3 to 6 months of counseling as you're thinking of getting married, pre and post. So if you guys start including that, just like you include the venue and the food, it's just as important to put this in your budget. I think there'll be a lot more successful marriages, and we have a lot of Muslim therapists here in Texas, subhanAllah, and you're welcome to reach out to the imam of our masjid here or to reach out to me to get those resources and really avail yourself of all the help that we have nowadays to help couples to have healthy relationships. That being said, I think that, even with all of the help that we have and all of the tools, sometimes marriages just don't work. And you know what, guys? It's okay. It's okay. It's halal. As long as it's halal, you guys are safe. And I will tell you, if you have the choice to fornicate or get your nikah and get married, choose nikah. Because it is halal to get divorced, it's haram to fornicate. The statistics are dismal for the Muslim community. 53% of Muslim kids in high school have sex by the time they graduate. 73% of college kids that are not married, that are Muslim, have had sex by the time they graduate. 73% of college kids have already had and engaged in premarital sex. And those are bearded boys, hijabi girls, non-hijabi girls, it doesn't matter. Okay? So those are our statistics nowadays. So the statistics are scary and they're true. So let's understand what our community is actually dealing with, and let's start teaching our young ones the skill sets that they need from a young age. And I also believe, like communities like yours, which are progressive and doing talks like this, let's start giving our teenagers talks on how to have healthy relationships, and let's encourage families to have their children get married young and have the family support young girls and young guys to get married. Not wait until they have a big career and money and this and that, because guess what? By then, your kids have already done haram. 73% of them have already had sex, guys. So that is something that you guys can choose to be a horse with blinders and say, it's not happening to my kid. Well, 73% chance there is. And these are the most religious families, the most practicing Muslim families you'll ever meet, because I see them every single day. And I'm sure the youth here will confirm how rampant these ills of society have spread to now. And so I really also believe that this old history of the man has to work and earn a certain amount and the girl, no. How realistic is it for a 25-year-old or a 28-year-old or a 30-year-old man to be celibate? It's kind of impossible, honestly. I mean, he'd have to be like a hermit, or like something's gonna be mentally wrong with him by then. Think about it. And if they are, then they're more frustrated, they're getting angry at their parents, they're just repressed, and they're just not healthy people, because it's not healthy to live celibate at the age of 30 or 28 or whatever. And for girls, it's the same thing now. It's just not healthy. So have rahmah on your children, have rahmah on your peers, that you guys, if you are not married, are doing something that's very unnatural, which is to stay celibate in your 20s or even in your late teens. So if you feel, and different people develop differently. If your child is coming to you and saying, I want to get married and I need to help them develop those skill sets and support them in their quest for marriage, so at least they know they have an outcome, a release. If they're told, no, you can't get married for another 8 years, what do you think they're going to do? They're going to do haram. They're going to fall into haram. And that's just the bottom line. So I'm going to end my spiel on early marriages with that and say, please support and encourage your kids. Give them the skill sets. Start them young as teenagers so they understand those skill sets. Give them the resources and the support before and after marriage. And inshallah, all of you will also get to enjoy the fruits of healthy marriages with a lot of love and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala at the center and the core of your relationships, inshallah. Thank you so much for your time. I hope that's been helpful. I'm going to open up the floor for any other further questions before we conclude. Yes. Early marriages historically are prevented because of cultural norms where families, especially I can speak for the Indian Pakistani culture, I don't know how it is for Arab culture, that they really want the boy to be done with his school, done with his education. In fact, a lot of families don't even care if their sons have premarital relationships. They'll just turn a blind eye to it. Hey, as long as he doesn't get married to her, when he's done, then we'll get him married to the girl we really want him to get married to. So unfortunately, culture has really played, and it's un-Islamic culture, played into this idea that men have to be done with school and earning. I think that it's so much healthier to have the parents support and get them married so that they can stay in a halal relationship. For not allowing your children to get married young? It's not always the kid. You mean the kids don't want to get married young either, is what you're saying? Yeah, if the kids don't want to get married young, there's a couple of reasons. It's because they're already having relationships and they don't need to be married for that, right? If they're already engaging in relationships, why do they need to get married? Number two, I think it's this idea themselves that they won't be able to support and take care of their spouse, right? Because they're not developmentally or financially or emotionally ready. And number three, I think it's just the parents also feeling that their children have to have a certain degree of qualification before they're psychologically or physically ready. But a lot of times kids are physically ready, but not mentally ready to get married. And I think our children, because, and I blame the parents for that too, because I think that a lot of moms and dads are not raising their kids psychologically to prep them to be married. They're so focused on education, 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 education. So I see so many kids in my practice that are 26, 27, they're surgeons and dentists and whatever, engineers, but they have no relationship skills because their parents never taught any. Everything was about go to school. And now all of a sudden at 26, 27, they're like, okay, now you're ready to get married, but I have no skill sets because they were never taught to me. I think more mothers and fathers need to have these talks from when the kids are 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, preparing them to get married young so that by the time they get there, they've had 10 years of training and thinking in that mindset. So I think that's another reason why kids don't want to get married young, because their parents don't talk about it, because we're over-focused, especially in the Indian Pakistani community, on get schooling done. Yes? You're saying that what are the conditions that parents should have in their minds when they're thinking of getting their kids married? Why, the question is, why are so many people having such a hard time finding the right partner, the right girl or the guy to get married? Like, why is it so hard to find that person? And why is the family making it so hard? So, I mean, I think it's simple, right? People have unrealistic expectations. I think social media doesn't help. But I think that a lot of people, you know, I mean, I don't know for y'all, but like I grew up on like Bollywood and Cinderella and Disney and all these kind of things where you have this like idea that this like knight in shining armor is going to come and he's going to be just perfect and amazing and he's going to sweep me off my feet and I'm going to get married and live this fairy tale life. And I think that guys and girls kind of buy into that, especially if we grew up in a culture where dating and having relationships is not allowed. So you really fantasize about it, right? And I think families have really unrealistic expectations. I'm constantly shocked. Like I'll meet girls and they'll talk about what they want in a guy and I'm like, dude, like, what are you bringing to the table that you have this list of expectations? And guys as well, right? I'm looking at the guy and he's like, I want this, 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 and I'm like, I just don't think that's realistic. But who am I to tell them, right? Because they're going to get offended. So I think there's expectations that families set. Go ahead. Right, but we're seeing that in today's society, right? So it's like getting back to the roots. Right. So what he's saying is that marriage is made complicated because people aren't looking at the character of a man and his righteousness and making it easy for him to get married. Families put up all these expectations and rules, and it really ends up destroying that, that ease of getting married, and that's created a lot of difficulty for a lot of men who want to get married, and women. Right, but the truth is that human beings are superficial. I'll answer. So human beings are superficial. This person's too short, this person's too tall, this person's too fat, this person's not rich enough. I mean, it's just, these are all the things. I mean, we can speak idealistically, but the reality is the reality. And you already know the answer to why marriages are so difficult. It's because we aren't looking at the Quran and Sunnah, and we are living in a superficial society that's status conscious, and that's looking at all of those things. But I think it's very scary because, remember, we come from an immigrant background. All of us came from immigrants. All of our parents have a fear of, financial disparity and, not being able to make it. So there's such a push for families to want those material things to feel secure because a lot of us came from backgrounds where we struggled, our parents struggled back home. So that's even more rampant, I think, here than even in other societies because of the immigrant history that we have as Muslims here. Yes, go ahead. The question? Right. Congratulations. You're the minority.